We're talking today with Sue Zipay of Englewood, Florida. The interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, Sue, start us off with some background on yourself, and to begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born in Medford, Massachusetts in 1934.
All right, and then where is that relative to Boston?
I believe it's west of Boston. I only was born there. I didn't live
Oh,
there.
okay. Where did you grow up then?
I grew up in Hingham, Massachusetts, which is south of Boston, maybe 30 miles south of Boston.
Okay. At that point, was that kind of a small town on its own, or was it still suburban Boston?
It was a very small town. I think my high school graduating class was not even 100. Maybe it was 80 to 90 students.
Okay. And you're a kid during World War II. Do you remember much about what life was like in the war years in that period?
Very little. I remember that we had blackouts on the cars. They'd have to paint the headlights. Half of them were black. And we had rationing. Of course, you could only have coupons to buy butter and meat and all that kind of stuff. And I remember seeing stars in the windows of the people that had boys in the service. My brother was in the Army.
Mm-hmm.
He got wounded and ended up in the hospital and what have you. He's okay now.
Okay. So the war was definitely around at that
Yes.
point. Okay.
But the best thing I remember about the war was the day it ended in 1945, when everybody was dancing in the streets. It was a celebration that you would not forget.
Okay. And where did you go to high school?
I went to Hingham High School
Okay. And when did you graduate?
in 1952.
Okay. Now, how did you learn to play baseball?
I had 4 brothers, and I just was always athletic. I mean, if they got me a new pair of ice skates, I skated. That athletic ability came natural to me. So when we started playing baseball, I could field grounders as well as they could. I could hit the ball as well as they could. And when they went to have a sandlot game, they would knock on the door and holler for me to come with them. So that's kind of how it happened. And that's how girls in those days learned the skills of baseball. They don't have that opportunity now because of Little League.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're trying to correct. The All-Americans are trying to get some way for young girls who prefer to play baseball instead of softball, the ability to hone their skills. And that's...
Okay. Now, did your school system have any athletic programs for girls?
They had some, but their basketball team was horrible, so I played CYO basketball, which is a little better.
And what is CYO basketball?
That was a Catholic youth organization.
Okay.
And I played on the softball team, of course, and it was quite boring because in those days most girls couldn't play very well.
Mm-hmm.
We might have 1 or 2 or 3 on the team that could really play, and the rest of them were pretty bad. And I played the field hockey team. Whatever was available, I played it.
Okay. And on the softball team, what position did you play?
I played shortstop because that's where all the balls went.
Mm-hmm. So they needed somebody who could catch and throw.
I just wanted to be wherever it was. Yeah.
All right. And at what point did you learn about the All-Americans?
That wasn't until I graduated. My softball coach said, "Did you know there was a professional baseball league in the Midwest?" I had never heard of it, and I couldn't believe it. And it just so happened that the chaperone for the Rockford Peaches lived about 30 miles away from me in Natick, Massachusetts. Her name was Dottie Green. She was the original catcher, or one of the original catchers for the Rockford Peaches. Hurt her knee badly and ended up as chaperone. So I drove up to her house and had a tryout in her driveway, and about 2 weeks later I got a contract in the mail.
Okay. Now, how did you originally wind up in contact with her?
From the high school softball coach.
Okay. So the coach knew her.
Yes.
And then he made that connection.
She made that connection, correct.
Okay. All right. Now, when you first went and met her, what impression did you have, or what did she tell you about the league?
She didn't tell me too much. We just went out and got a ball, and she threw me some grounders, and vice versa. And I think she was just looking to see what kind of skills and how I moved. And you can tell an athlete when you see them. I since migrated to tennis when I was older, and I can tell you a tennis player at age 9 whether they're going to develop into a good one or not. So you just kind of know.
Okay. All right. So now they've signed you up. Do you remember what they were offering to pay you at that point?
They paid me $50 a week, and I believe it was $2 a day for meals, which was adequate in those days. And of course, I think every girl in the league will tell you they would have played for nothing.
Okay. Now, at this point, did you have a job, or?
I didn't at that time, and then when I came back in the summers, I did. I was a secretary for Raytheon Manufacturing, which is a big Boston company.
Okay, all right. So now, let's kind of launch you into your career. Do you go someplace for spring training, or do you join the team when it's already
I met them in
playing?
South Bend.
Okay.
I got on the train in Boston at age, I think I was 18, against the wishes of my mother and my aunt. They gave me a little brown bag with a lunch on the train. Had very little money, and so I went to South Bend, was supposed to meet them there. I went to I believe it was the Oliver Hotel. And I went there, and nobody was there. So I got the smallest room and the cheapest room they had in the hotel, because I didn't know if I was going to have to pay for it or what. And a couple hours later, I got a knock on the door, and there was Dottie Green, the chaperone, saying, "What are you doing in this little room?" And from then on, then we had spring training, and that was it.
Okay. And now, so, now was the league still training together at that point, or were the teams now training separately from each other?
The teams were training separately. Yeah, we were separate. Yeah.
All right. And I think you had told me before we started this, you played for the Rockford Peaches, but you're in South Bend?
That's where they had the spring training.
Okay, so all the teams were there, but
No,
they, okay.
just the Peaches. And I don't know why.
So the Peaches were training in South Bend, Indiana?
Yeah. And
Okay.
don't ask me to explain that.
All right. So you did not see the Blue Sox there?
No,
Okay.
no.
All right. So what was that? Do you remember the first day of spring training, what it was like to go in there?
I was scared to death. Especially when I saw the women play, because I thought I was pretty good. And then when I saw the level and the abilities there, I realized I was just a small fish in a big pond. And so we had our spring training, and Johnny Rawlings hit some grounders to me at shortstop, and I was so tired and so excited and so nervous. I just played, and it went well, but there was no way I was ever going to become shortstop on that team as long as the girl, Joni Berger, was there. She was an excellent player. And I know that I was really nervous for a long time until he said to me one day, "Sue, you wouldn't be here if you weren't as good as all the rest." So that kind of settled me down a little bit.
Okay. Now, about how long did spring training last?
Oh gosh, I don't remember. 2-3 weeks maybe.
Okay.
I remember I threw my back out. Yeah, and I've had trouble ever since. Didn't know. I thought maybe I was just stiff from all the spring training, because I could hardly walk up the stairs. I could hardly move my right leg. And the chaperone finally decided I'd had something physically wrong with me, not just muscle aches. So they took me to a chiropractor. I'd never been to one in my life. And eventually it worked out, but that was a long, long time ago, and I've had trouble ever since.
Okay. Now, did you have trouble hitting? I mean, playing baseball with the good pitching?
I had trouble hitting in the games because I was really nervous. And as you know, you go out there as a girl, you never have people in the stands like boys. You're not used to that, of course. Used to playing in the cow pasture where nobody's watching. I remember playing in a schoolyard when I was in 7th grade, and I'd be out there hitting the ball over the fence, and all the teachers would be lined up in the window looking out there and smiling, because I was a novelty, I guess, at that time. But yeah, I was very nervous, and I look back now and say, oh, I wish I had the brains now that I had then, because I wasn't watching the ball and so forth. So my batting average was pretty bad, but I did a lot of fungo practice, and I'd hit to the fielders, and I did a lot of batting practice, pitching, and I could hit it. I could have hit it a country mile, but I never got a chance to really get relaxed enough to do what I had the ability to do.
Yeah, okay. So you're in South Bend for spring training, and then when that ends, now do you go to Rockford? Or
It's been a long time. We got on a bus and went to Rockford, I believe, and then we got introduced to the places where Dottie Green would find all the homes we would stay in. My roommate was Dolores Lee Pickles. I'm sure you've got her on your tape somewhere.
I do.
She was a hoot to live with. She brought her accordion with her from Jersey City. She was just learning to play it, and she would practice How Much Is That Donkey in the Window over and over and over again. And she was a late sleeper, always made us late for practice, and we'd get punished, have to run around the track 3 or 4 times. But she's a great girl, great girl.
All right. Now, and what kind of accommodations did you have?
We stayed in private homes, bedroom, twin beds, and we'd have kitchen privileges. When we come back from a road trip, of course, usually the people that owned the home would do something nice, like leave a cheesecake out for us or something, something like that. And they did our laundry, and that was good.
Okay. Do you know if the league paid them for that, or?
I don't know what the arrangements were. I'm sure they paid them. I'm sure they did.
Okay. And then, so when you're at home, what would a typical day be like? If you're...
A typical day, we come home from a road trip, catch a few hours of sleep, have to get up in the morning and go to practice, and then we'd have a few hours off, and then we'd come back to the ballpark around 4 o'clock to get warmed up and ready for a night game. And we played every night, 7 days a week, doubleheader on Sunday.
All right. And do you remember, now, when you first went in, did you start a game, your first game, or did you come in later to replace somebody, or?
I just got put in when he needed me, and I didn't play a lot. Like I said, I was utility, so I throw me at second base or right field whenever he needed me.
Okay.
And if I wasn't playing, I'd coach first base or third base. Yeah.
Okay. So what did the team have then by way of coaches? You had a manager. Did he have anybody else helping him?
Not really.
Just the other players?
Yeah. Right.
Okay. And would the chaperone help coach because she was a former player?
No, she was a former player, but no, she'd just sit in the dugout and take care of somebody if they got a strawberry from sliding into base. Or I remember once I hit a foul ball off the bat, and somehow or another, don't ask me how, the ball crawled up the bat and hit me in the eye, and I went down like a lump, and it puffed up like this. And of course, I'm saying, leave me alone. I still want to play, but they took me out of the game. But she was there for those occasions.
Okay. All right. Then, when you had road trips and so forth, I mean, how did that work? If you're going to play somebody else, what happens? You say, we're going to go play South Bend, or we're going to go play Grand Rapids.
We had the schedule. We knew when we were
Okay.
leaving, and get on the bus at a certain time, and then travel X number of hours, and go to the hotel. They had us scheduled, and you knew who you were rooming with because you had the same roommate most of the time. We'd get to the wherever we were going to play, and then we'd go out to the field and again practice before the game at 4 o'clock. So it was constant all the time. It was.
Now, what kinds of rules did they have for how you were supposed to dress or behave, or to what extent were there still regulations?
Okay, you've probably got this from all the other girls, but again, we couldn't wear pants in public. So if we're coming home from a game on the bus, and it's 10 o'clock at night, and you're in the bus with your jeans on, and you wanted to get off and get a cup of coffee, you had to change and put a skirt on. We couldn't smoke in public, and almost everybody smoked in those days because we didn't know that it was not good for you. So those were two rules that they stuck to: no pants in public, and no short hair. I mean, they wanted you to look like a female, not like a boy.
Okay. And then what about sort of personal conduct? I mean, did they monitor you at all, or tell you what you could or couldn't do?
When I came into the league, I think a lot of that stuff had disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody ever told me what I should or shouldn't do, but you obviously knew what you should or shouldn't do. I mean, you wouldn't swear, you wouldn't smoke, you wouldn't wear pants. You just kind of knew.
Okay. Now, what sort of mix of players did you have on the Peaches? Because this is now getting to be the end of the league. And
we had, one of ours, I don't know how old she was. I thought she was 110 or something at the time, but she was probably in her 40s, Rosie Gayshock, and she was the oldest player.
Mm-hmm.
And she'd been there for, I don't know, maybe from the beginning. And then, of course, you've heard about Dottie Keys, who's one of the better players. Ruth Richards was the catcher. She's, I still keep in touch with her. She was a great catcher.
Mm-hmm.
We had a gal from Boston, lived near me. In fact, she drove me to and from the next year. I went with her. And I think she's got a little problem right now. She's not really as sharp as she used to be, I'll put it that way. And she was a pitcher and had the greatest curveball you ever saw. The first time I went up and tried to warm her up, I couldn't even catch the ball because it was dropping or moving so fast. I think she had long fingernails. I think she did something with the fingernails. Not really sure.
All right. Now, do you remember how young the youngest players were, or were you about the youngest?
I was probably one of the youngest. Another gal came in with me at the same time, Jane Sands, and Jeannie Ventura. I was talking with her today. I think she was 16 or 17, something like that.
Okay. Now, at this point, did they have any kind of minor league system, or were there other teams affiliated with the league that they would get players from? Because I don't think they didn't have the barnstorming teams anymore by this time.
No.
So there was not a junior league of any kind to get them.
No.
So they just had to.
Yeah, they were just getting what they could get.
Mm-hmm.
So they found me.
Okay.
I found them.
All right. Now, what kind of fan support did you have?
I guess in the beginning, and I wasn't there, they said they were drawing up to 10,000 people, which was great in those days. We did pretty well when I was there. I remember they used to look around because they knew they had dropped off in attendance, and they'd say, oh, how many do you think are here tonight? And they'd say 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, something like that. But we had a good crowd.
Did Rockford tend to have bigger crowds than other places that you played, or?
I can't remember.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember. But there are a lot of farm people, farm boys that I double dated with Pickles. They, you know.
Okay, so there are still young men coming to watch the games. Now, did you get families coming? I mean, to the
Yeah, a lot of families, and a lot of families like to entertain us. I remember a lot of cookouts. They'd have, big cookouts with steaks and corn and all that. And when we had time off, they'd invite the whole league.
Okay, and now you mentioned at the start of this that your mother wasn't very happy about your heading off. Did your family kind of get used to it after a while, or accept it, or?
Obviously they did. They had no choice because I was going to go. I mean, to me that was the greatest thing in the world. But as you know, in those days, a girl playing baseball, it was kind of frowned upon. So I can remember them telling me to put the jeans away. You got to grow up, young lady, stop playing with the boys. The girls couldn't play, so what could you do?
All right. So you're there in the '53 season. I don't know, how did Rockford do in '53?
We didn't win the pennant or get in the playoffs, I don't believe.
No.
No.
Grand Rapids won that year.
Probably, yeah. I remember, it's such a long time, and I was there for just 2 years, and I was just beginning to get used to different players, as a matter of fact. I remember Gertie Dunn, who has since, I think, a few years back, she got killed in an airplane accident. She was a pilot. She's gone. The Weavers, who could knock the ball a country mile, big, strong girls. But, I don't remember a lot of them. Okay.
Now, when the '53 season ends, you went back home. Then did you pick up a job then?
Yeah, I was private secretary. Yeah.
And how did you wind up with that job? You just answer an ad, or?
I just applied for it. Just went in there. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then, so you worked for them through the winter, and then it's time to go off to play again. And when they hired you, did they understand that would be going on, or?
I can't remember when we got the notice that the league was finished. Exactly.
Okay, but you did go back to play in '54, though.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So you had 1 year there.
Yeah. Okay. No, I just knew when it was time to go back, and that's when I went back with Murray Kelly. The Boston was her nickname.
Right.
Because she drove, and she was old enough to drive, so she drove back and forth. Yeah.
Okay. Now, from the player's perspective, I guess for you, the '54 season, were you now starting to kind of get the feel of things, or be more comfortable?
Yeah.
And did you get to play any more?
A little bit more, But I was still had a lot to learn. Okay. I think at at the latter part of the league, they didn't spend as much time with Johnny Rawlings. We didn't have training sessions. At the beginning, they really trained the girls. I think the coach before me, Bill Allington was his name, and I think Pickles played under him as well. But he really drilled skills into them. When I came, I had what I had, raw talent, that's it. Anything that happened from then on, I developed from watching and just listening.
Okay. So the other players didn't really work with you?
Nobody worked with me, no. You just picked it up.
You just kind of went in and you played, okay. Now, could you tell in 1954 that the league was in trouble?
No, I didn't have an inkling as to what was going on. Some of the older players did, because they knew that they were running out of money and there was trouble.
Okay. Now, were there fewer teams in 54 than 53, or were you not really counting?
I wasn't counting because I didn't know what they had before.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Okay. Now, was Rockford, were they able to make payroll? I mean, did you always get paid?
Right, we never had a problem with that. No.
Okay. And then when you got down to the end of the season, did they tell you the league was ending, or did you just go home and not know?
I'm trying to remember how they notified us. I can't remember exactly when it was. But it was a very sad situation. I think it was maybe at the end of the season they told us that we wouldn't be coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, Bill Allington wound up organizing a traveling team.
Right, and Pickles went on that.
Okay.
She played on that, and Jeannie Lescombe and a few of them. For a couple of years, I think, they traveled around. They did quite well, too. Yeah.
Okay. Now, were you asked to be part of that?
No,
or?
I wasn't good enough. I hadn't been there long enough. Bill Allington didn't even know who I was because I'd never met him. Johnny Rawlings was the coach when I went there.
Okay. So now you just sort of go back to Massachusetts. So you go back home.
Yep.
So then, did you really kind of think or reflect at all at that time? I mean, what's happening to you? What am I going to do now?
Yeah.
Or did you?
Yeah, it was very sad. However, I'll throw this little something in there. It was I had met a young man who was a groundskeeper at Bayer Stadium in Rockford, a summer job from the University of Illinois, and we kind of became an item.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended up that he went to pre-flight school in Pensacola, and I went down there to visit him and blah, blah, blah. And so, to make a long story short, we got engaged, and he's the one I ended up marrying.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had 3 children, and you know after that what you do for the next 10 years.
All right, yeah. Now, did you stop working while you were married and had kids, or did you have a job? Okay.
No, I was full-time mother and housewife, which was wonderful. It's a shame they can't do that in this day and age.
Well, some can if they can afford it, but
that's the only way they can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Now, but you didn't necessarily. You couldn't play baseball anymore. But did you still stay involved with athletics in some form?
You know, I tried, but when you have 3 little babies all born close together and housewife, I had no time. I had a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I put it into cleaning floors and doing housework things and knitting and sewing and doing all those feminine things that women do. And until the kids the youngest one was in maybe 3rd grade, somewhere around there. And then some neighbors invited me to play tennis. And I thought, I've never played tennis in my life, but I'm athletic and they're old ladies. And that's when I found out it was a skill sport.
Mm-hmm.
And I got hooked on tennis, and that became my second career sport.
Okay. And so then how did that play out? I mean,
Well, I worked at it, kind of self-taught, and I got ranked in New England. I played a lot of doubles. Not a very good singles player. I could serve like crazy because it's kind of like throwing a ball and run to net and volley. And that was my plan. And I became very involved. I went to a school, Vic Braden School in California, and learned how to teach. Then I became a teaching pro, which I loved, and worked with some programs where I lived then with the kids. And when we moved to Florida, I bought a tennis club that was falling down and dilapidated, and we turned it into a really nice little place, and I've been there for 30 years.
All right. And at what point did you get involved with the Women's Baseball League Association? Because they've been now going for like 35 years. How long have you been connected to them?
Well, I can't remember when the first one was, but I was on the board for a period of time when Wimp Baumgartner was there. Can't remember the years, I'm no good on dates. And then I went to a lot of the reunions, but not all of them, because I was busy with the tennis club, and I'm paranoid about flying, second reason. I've become more involved lately because they got me on a vision committee, and then I started thinking about what the future holds and our legacy, and the museum idea was like a light bulb going off in my head, so I've been more involved in the past few years.
Now, talk to me about the museum idea. What museum, what idea, and how did that come about?
Well, some members of the league wanted to have a standalone baseball museum for women. They talked about putting it in Cooperstown, which is way out in the sticks, as you know, and I'm thinking, okay, how are you going to sustain that? How are you going to support it? Way out there, who's going to come? I didn't think it could ever work. That was my own personal opinion. And then they talked about putting it somewhere else, and it's the same thing. And I thought, well, there's so many sports nowadays, and females that are making so much money in sports as well. And there's nothing in this country. There is no women's sports museum anywhere in this country. And we have a Hall of Fame here, Hall of Fame there, the stars are in there, but there's no history of women's sports. I remember Babe Dietrichson came to one of our baseball games. It was great. She threw some balls and she pitched a little bit. And I'll never forget that because she was a great female athlete. And I thought, we need a place where we can tell all the stuff about the history of women and what they've gone through, and well, it's being lost. I have a friend of mine that played on a field hockey team, and they toured Europe in the 50s. Nobody's ever heard of that. They never heard her name. And she's got a scrapbook full of stuff like that. And there's a lot of that that's just totally being lost. And I was hoping that through this museum and the history of women's sports, we can entice people to get on there and talk about stuff that's happened and what's gone on in the past. And then in addition to that, my vision is that we have some kind of education, classrooms for little girls to go in and say, you might not be a good baseball player, but you might love the game. What can I do? I can be a journalist, I can be an umpire, and all these careers that are now available in sports that weren't available when I was there. So that's what I'm hoping, is the history, education, past, present, and what the future holds for young girls.
Okay. And so how far have your plans come along, or what's happened?
We're just in our second year of gala fundraising. We're having a gala October 20th, 2017 at the Selby Gardens in Sarasota, Florida. And then if we can raise enough funds, we'll start our capital fundraising. And so we have some people on the committee that have diverse skills. We have a nonprofit man and an architect and a builder and a woman who's a professor at, I think it's Vanderbilt, I'm not sure, but a group that have different skills to help put this thing together, and they're all really enthused. And I've talked to men and women, and they all think it's a great idea. So the enthusiasm is there. Now it's a matter of getting the funds together.
Yeah, the money.
And Sarasota I picked it not because I live in Englewood, which is maybe just south of Sarasota, but because it's a huge sports tourist town now. They have the new rowing championships are coming there in a week or two, and they've got Bollettieri's, and they've got all the spring training.
Bollettieri is the tennis academy.
He's now branched out into football and baseball, and all the sports he's got going. So I thought, people come there for sports, and where else? A women's sports museum. That's the perfect place for tourism.
So you have spring training teams down there, and minor league baseball, and all sorts of things.
Perfect. And the Braves are coming there now, and they're going to build their spring training stadium about 5 miles from where I live. And I've got this little idea that maybe I can talk them into having their facility become a training ground for girls' baseball. I don't know. But that's how it has to get started in order to have the little girls develop their skills, because there's no other way. Otherwise, at 6th or 7th grade, they say, you can't play baseball anymore, you have to play softball.
Well, I mean, the women who played on the Peaches, I mean, did you know much about how they learned to play?
Same as I did. We all developed our skills the same way. With the boys in a field, a cow pasture or wherever, we could, throw a base down. We'd come, they'd knock on the door and you get your glove, and if there was 6 of us or 4 of us or 3 of us, it didn't matter. You got the field, you're up at bat. I mean, we just had our sandlot games, and we played with the boys, which helped us develop our skills.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the main way.
Okay. Now, to think back on the time that you spent with the league, how do you think that affected you, or what did you take out of it?
Oh, cliche. The camaraderie, the team concept. That's the big thing. Is you're not an individual. You're part of a larger thing there, and the friendships. As you can see, they've lasted all the years.
Did you gain confidence in yourself through this?
I think I did. Yeah. I mean, like I said, you come there as a naive young girl, and you have to get up and hit a ball with 4,000 or 5,000 people watching. That's something that's difficult to overcome, and but it does. It gives you the self-confidence. And when Johnny Rawlings said to me, if you weren't good enough, you wouldn't be here. All that's good for your self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to share the story today.
I hope you enjoyed it.
All right. Very good.